Well, hi and welcome to everyone who's come tonight to tonight's panel on exploring the culture of alternative medicine. Tonight we have a wonderful group of panelists who have come from all scopes of different fields of wellness, whether it be lifestyle or a specific modality. So they'll go ahead and introduce themselves. My name's Jazmine Gonzalez, and I'll be moderating tonight's event, okay? So we can just kind of go down the line. You guys can just kind of introduce yourselves and kind of go off, what you do or what is it that you do.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Dusty Stanczyk. My wife and I here started eatmoverest.com, a website and a blog, and some social media, YouTube, that we kind of got started just by chance, kind of for fun a few years ago, because we wanted to improve our health, and so that's what we did, and people started asking for recipes and things like that. So we've done some online certifications and different education for ourselves, continuing education and stuff, to be able to help people with their health, specifically through plant-based eating and lifestyle changes. So I don't know what that leaves you with. But.
Well, I am Erin Stanczyk, and like Dusty said, we started the website and health and lifestyle brand Eat, Move, Rest, and we've kind of coined it because it's the three things that we all do every day, but we could all be doing better. But we have a heavy emphasis on plant-based nutrition, vegan lifestyle. There is a difference between the two, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. But we've just, kind of embarked on this path for our own health reasons, and we found success and started getting questions from friends and family and online followers. So we started educating ourselves and getting certifications, and I guess now we're on this expert panel. We'll do our best.
Yep.
I'm Maggie Bertsche, and I'm a massage therapist, body worker. Based on my education, they call me an integrative therapist. I have a psychology background, art history, and I went to school in Boulder, Colorado, where I had a spectrum of Eastern practitioners, Eastern modality, to like very, very Western, very, very clinical. So I was very fortunate in my education to have a variety of approaches. So integrative massage therapy, what I study is how nourishment and downregulation of the nervous system can help people shift into like better health. Something that our culture, I think, really focuses on is intensity and high performance. But something that I feel like we're really missing is looking at restorative practices and looking at how something as simple as touch or meditation can be fused together and kind of tap into a really basic need, which is just connection, how that can help us shift even in our mental health. So it's as I've heard around town, like it's a very feminine approach to health and wellness, but also just, it's always interesting to hear the feedback on that. But yes, Bertsche Bodywork is what I do, and I do body work.
Erin and I, just side note, have been going to Maggie for years, so it can't be that feminine. Like, if it is, what's that say about me? But
you have feminine in you.
Totally.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin March and I work for Populum. It's a premium hemp CBD company. I've been with Populum for about 8 months now, but our company was founded in 2016 and our mission is really to destigmatize hemp CBD and bring it to the mainstream.
Amazing people. My name is Mo Horner and I'm a clinical herbalist in Omaha. I have a couple of practices, one with Prairie Star Botanicals 1 day a week and one at Four Winds Natural Healing 3 days a week. So I want to destigmatize herbalism for everyone. And my mission is basically to not just see the people that come to me as clients, but also reach out into the community. And so I co-founded a community herbal and alternative health clinic that offers our services free of charge or donation-based 1 day a month. So if anybody in Lincoln is interested in starting up something like this, I'd love to talk to you about bringing herbalism to Lincoln and the community.
Hi there, I'm Donna Huber. I am the owner of 13 Moons Acupuncture in Omaha, and I've been in practice for nearly 17 years. My dad became a vegetarian when I was like in 4th grade, so we were the weird family with the granola dad back in the 70s. And I totally rebelled in my 20s against that. In my early 20s and my later 20s, I started to kind of get back into, I really actually don't like the word alternative because I feel like it really is the original, to be more natural. And then I ended up actually having a fertility struggle, and it was my OBGYN in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who told me to go get acupuncture. And I was not unfamiliar because in Santa Fe there's an acupuncturist in every corner. But I had never had it, and so my husband and I started having it and feeling better and realizing, wow, there's something to this. And eventually, through a long and painful struggle, decided to go to acupuncture school. And so I got my master's degree and graduated in 2002, set up my practice in Omaha in 2003. And I actually specialize in fertility, but it's not all that I do because working with fertility is very actually intense. So I like to have knee pain every once in a while. So acupuncture is really amazing for pain type stuff. But traditional Chinese medicine includes acupuncture, Chinese herbs, gua sha, bagwan, which you all probably know as cupping, food therapy, and actually emotional therapy. So it's really a preventative medicine, and it is really one of the main 3 medicines. And so I love it, and I love to share it with the world. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. We've already kind of touched on this, but as far as people on the panel who feel as though like maybe they kind of had some sort of epiphany or some kind of life-changing moment, it doesn't have to be necessarily life-changing, but if anybody wants to jump in and talk about how they kind of got interested in the field that they're working in.
So I would say is that my doctor told me to go get acupuncture, and my epiphany was actually when I stopped trying to control what I thought should be. And when you're on a fertility journey, you think that you have to do all of these things. And when I stopped trying to control what I thought should be and allowed in that which was, amazing things actually happened in my life. And that included, I mean, I had always kind of had this, because of my dad, been, natural minded. I mean, we used to go to this woman's house in Michigan and buy whole wheat bread. This was back when wheat was good. Wheat's not good anymore. Because all they had in the grocery stores was white bread. And humanity is actually really suffering right now, and where everybody's really actually turning to different ways of looking at how to heal the body. And what I love about Chinese medicine is that it sees the entire body as a holistic organism, and it takes that all into consideration. In Western medicine, the cardiac floor is floor 3 and the psych ward is floor 7. They've literally separated the body into the sum of its parts, which there's value in that, but Chinese medicine brings it back around. And so my epiphany really was that there's something to this, and luckily for all of us, it's starting to infiltrate into the middle of the country, because they've got it in hospitals and in California and in New York, so we're catching up. What was your epiphany, Mo?
When my youngest child was in kindergarten, my doctor told me I had a lump in my breast. And of course, that, you know what that means. That means surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, etc. Well, I never would have gotten through that if I hadn't taken the advice of a friend who said, go see my naturopathic doctor. And I did, for one reason, because I didn't want to lose my hair in therapy. So I went to see the naturopathic doctor, and he said, here's your bottles of herbs, start taking these. And 2 weeks later, I lost all my hair. but I also felt the best I'd felt in my life. I had suffered for 25 years with all kinds of problems like fibromyalgia, what they called fibromyalgia. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis when I was a kid. I didn't have it, but it all stemmed from childhood sexual abuse. I'm sure of that. I'm 100% positive that's where it all came from. And many in this room can relate with me. So it was then that I said, like she said, there's something to this. I need to explore this and discover what's going on here and find my own solutions. And I did. I did go through the Western care, but I also coupled it with naturopathic care, which was essentially a form of herbalism. I studied and ended up working in herbalism. And here I am today, 10 years later, after 10 years in practice. I love it.
Wow. I don't have a moment like that. I would say I've always kind of had a mentality of coupling both Western medicine with natural remedies. I grew up on a farm in Southwest Virginia. My dad was an apiarist, so we had honeybees, and he always believed in the restorative power of honey, which I would hope that many of you too would tend to agree. But then I ended up at Populum, which was kind of a natural progression for me. But I've never had an aha moment. I think I'm definitely the type that believes in both Western and natural remedies.
Well, I grew up in a very cerebral culture, grew up very, very, very military. And growing up in that kind of violence that I was exposed to as a very small child, like we used to have bombs being checked underneath our car like daily before I would like go to school and leave school. And I tell you this because from a very young age, I was internalizing a lot of stress, more than I could like be capable of like processing. And very conservative, like very, very conservative upbringing spiritually. And because the environment, there was such high risk and high stakes, it was necessary that, this little girl running around that was bilingual, like stayed, in line. And so as a little girl, I really was internal, like I would, kind of like freeze up. And I, over my lifetime, developed a neuromuscular holding pattern called flat back, which is called soldier's back, and it means my thoracic stands like straight up. So I also, when I was like experiencing like some freedom, the older I got, I was really wild. So I kind of went like, and some people know a little bit about my history, but alcoholism and drug addiction runs really rampant on both sides of my family. And I saw PTSD in my father. I got to see the kind of volatile and loud, effects of war and how that, can have on a parent. And luckily, my family and I went through a process of healing and recovery. But mind you, I was still really focused on psychology. I thought that in the mind would fix all these problems. And so here I was applying for master's and PhD program, and I just completely hit a rock bottom with my drinking. And so the universe had other plans, and so I had body work, and I was in early recovery. I felt horrible. I was detoxing. And I lost complete control. And then I had a session of body work, and it was like I felt safe in my own body, and I felt incredible in my own body. And I was like, this is what I have to do. I have to like study this. And I knew a little bit that psychology was going to move into the body. There was a lot of studies coming out about the gut and about the mind-body connection in the stomach and the gut. So I was like, well, maybe I'll go back to school eventually, but I know I need to get some like real solid experience out in the field, practicing, and I've been chasing that feeling and connecting to that feeling like daily now in my career. So the universe totally had different plans for me, and it's in the body.
I think for me, before the aha moment, it started kind of when Dusty and I had gotten together in college, towards the end of college. I started to experience a lot of my first bouts of really stress, anxiety, depression. It started to build and build, and it came to a point where I would wake up in the middle of the night breathless and what most would call panic attacks. I wasn't quite buying into it, so I started to get on Google, and Google became my best friend and my worst enemy because, you know, you go to Google for all your answers, but they're never the answers that you want to hear. So it was always,
scenario.
you are going to die. A lot of, you know, and then coming after the you know, supposed panic attacks were just so many odd, indescribable symptoms, numbness, tingling, pain, odd sensations, weird feelings, brain fog. Like, it just kept getting worse and worse and building and building. And coming from a family of doctors, I had them all at my disposal. It was easy access to get lined up with all of the specialists, CT scans, MRIs, nerve conduction studies, which still to this day, I couldn't really tell you what that even was. Everything came back clear and fine, which you would think would give somebody peace of mind, but it really just added to my sense of discomfort because I really was feeling what you would call dis-ease. If you break up disease into dis-ease, that's exactly what I was experiencing. And just because it didn't have a labeled diagnosis didn't mean that it didn't exist. And so for professionals to tell you to your face that there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing worse in the world.
Yeah.
And he saw me struggle firsthand. I don't know how we got engaged, how we got married after all of that, but it did end up coming to a head. We were actually on a flight to San Diego, and about a half hour before they announced that we would be landing soon, everything just went haywire. All of these symptoms just really came to an extreme head. They ended up having to fly faster, basically, and land the plane early. I was met with an ambulance. I had never ridden in an ambulance before. They took me straight to the hospital. Meanwhile, Dusty was left trying to find me and track me down, and sat in a waiting room for hours and hours in an emergency room, which was crazy. That wouldn't happen here. Still, everything came back on my blood panels normal. But kind of like you had said in the beginning, I was trying to figure out what all I could be taking and putting in and supplements and all of this stuff. And I just was like, that's it. It's all got to go. We got to get rid of the, number one, the hormonal birth control I've been on for almost 10 years. Just all the pills and supplements, even though they were all like, you know, just vitamins and supplements, things like that. It was just, I just felt like I needed to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And so that kind of,
Yeah, and so similar timing, actually. I was going through my own struggles with mostly my gut. Just, Maggie, you mentioned the gut-brain connection. Anxiety, depression, stuff like that have always, unfortunately, been part of my life. I was on 2 medications in my mid-20s for, again, acid reflux, just terrible indigestion, never felt good, but I was healthy, right? I was working out, I was doing basically everything you should be doing, going to Subway for lunch because that was the Jared diet. He was losing weight, everybody was healthy, and so I thought that we were doing everything right. And so my struggle was definitely not as extreme as yours, but we were together, right? And so we were doing everything we could, researching to try to figure out what our epiphany might eventually be. And for us, that ended up being a plant-based diet, but it took years. Erin got her undergrad in biology and mine in communication, and they actually have coupled together pretty well for us to be able to work with people with the science and the interpersonal communication skills and stuff like that. And so we were like, you know, let's go get more education and let's go get these certifications to be able to help other people, whether it's with their psychological or physical health. Let's just go do it. And all while learning mostly for ourselves, selfishly, just wanting to figure out how we could feel good first. And so our epiphany ended up, long story short, ended up being a long couple-year journey of cutting out foods, eventually ending up on a plant-based diet and feeling better than ever. So I just turned 33, and I told everybody at our demo this morning that I can do more push-ups, pull-ups, and totally kick my 23-year-old self's butt any day, simply because of the lifestyle changes that we've made, the foods that we eat, the rest that we get, the way we live. Seeing Maggie, doing things like that. Acupuncture last year, that was a mini epiphany for me. I pulled a muscle squatting, which I'm not a bodybuilder. I probably don't have any business squatting, but I was just working out. Didn't think I was doing too much or anything. I couldn't move for 6 months. It was an issue that I know I saw you for, Maggie, and eventually went and saw acupuncture. With Aaron's dad being a physician, it's really easy to be like, hey, what about a cortisol shot? Or what about these painkillers? Or what about this? And my acupuncture guy was like, just give me a shot. Just give me a shot before you do I was desperate. I was really hurting. And he was like, just give this a shot. And I did. And it changed my life. And I've done it once or twice a week probably for the last 6 months. And something that is alternative, that frankly I don't think is alternative. I think it's ancient. And I think that this way of eating, frankly, is the original way of eating. And I think that we need to get back to, again, agree with both Western and traditional or Chinese medicine, just using it all to our benefit. And that's been an epiphany, I think, for both of us. So.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to point out as well is that I don't really like the term alternative either. I think it's more, we need to focus more on like integrative and realize, use what works for you, what might work for you, might work for somebody else, because that word alternative makes it seem like it's, yeah, exactly. So one thing I think that's awesome that integrative medicine or integrative, functional medicine even brings out is this focus on mental health. And a lot of you guys have brought that up in your stories or epiphanies, so to say. So if you guys want to, touch on how your modality or therapy kind of helps with more on the mental health of your, can help other patients or people alike.
So Chinese medicine, again, sees the body as a holistic entity. And what is in the mind is in the body. And we are often taught in medicine, unfortunately, and I come from a Western family too. My nurses and doctors, and I'm kind of the weird one proudly now. But everything that we experience from the moment we are born until the day we die is stored in our cellular structure. And so it is up to us whether, if, how we process that. And even the worst of worst traumas are available to be healed. It is always going to be a story within us, but it is possible to heal that. And all of these modalities help that. And our food today is toxic. Like, it really is. And in Chinese medicine, the gut is actually the absolutely most important system, because without this being nourished, the heart's not going to work right, the lungs aren't going to work right, the kidneys aren't going to work right, the liver's not going to work right, so on and so forth. So food is medicine, and it is necessary. And that is something, so I have been on this path for 30 years, and I struggle every freaking day to make the right choices because it is not easy. And there are people who make billions of dollars while on us being sick. And so we're all coming to this now because it's time, right? Acupuncture, Chinese medicine, is 3,000 years old. I would argue that this was the original functional medicine. Everything comes from Chinese medicine. Tui Na was the original PT and chiropractic. Functional medicine is figuring out how does the body function at its optimal. So when you get blood tests done, here's an example, vitamin D. Vitamin D levels in your blood, the reference range is between 30 and 100. most doctors will think it's fine between 30 and 50, but the optimal is to be between 75 and 100. But a doctor will freak out, because I just had a patient with this the other day, when their number was 89. So we need to learn and educate ourselves on what does it take for us to be healthy, and what it takes for me and you and you and you and you and you and you are going to be different. Like, vegan is amazing for some people, not for everybody. I actually need animal protein. So it's about finding out where your people came from, and how can you be nourished. I kind of already forgot the question. I'm getting off on a tangent. Mental health. So what is in your mind is in your body. And P.S., all of the drugs that are being prescribed for mental health can be helpful in the moment. But in my opinion, from a Chinese medicine standpoint, even like schizophrenia can be monitored and dealt with through diet. And acupuncture is amazing. Body work is amazing. It's about, are we willing to be open to what we need to learn and do in this lifetime? So, and Chinese medicine is actually really amazing at mind stuff. Most people come in for stress. So that's all.
Absolutely. All right, so let's not forget plants. If we want to have a contest, plants came first, then people. So plants have been around forever, right? How we use plants has been around as long as humans have been around, right? But the most common client I get is somebody who's already been to a lot of doctors and a lot of health food stores. And I ask them to bring in all their supplements and all their medications, and they come in with bags, heavy bags, that have to sit on the floor because they're so heavy, full of supplements that they've tried at the health food store because the health food store employee told them, oh, you have anxiety? This is good for anxiety. Without asking anybody, any of those people, well, who are you? What is it about you that makes you anxious? Do you get headaches when you're anxious? Does your back tense up when you're anxious? Do you get stomach aches and nausea when you're anxious? Does your legs shake when you're anxious? Those are 4 or 5 different kinds of anxious people who all need different plants. That's why you need an herbalist to help you parse out what is the plant you need to help you with that issue. And of course we'll get into mind-body issues because we're all practicing forms of holistic health here. So if you have specific questions about an herb for you, maybe we can talk after.
Well, I'm going to talk about one specific plant, CBD. So as far as mental health, CBD is relatively new. In the United States, it was legalized in December of 2018, so it's a relatively new industry in the United States, I should say. Because of that, there's not a ton of research out there. So I don't want to say that, yes, CBD cures all mental illness and anxiety and depression, but I can say anecdotally, our customers have found that it has helped with their symptoms. I can tell you an example of a friend of mine. When I first started at Populum, he is a veteran, and he has PTSD, and he suffered a TBI. And I was new at the company. I wanted to give my friends some CBD, so I sent him some. He was on several different medications, and with CBD, he's now sleeping through the night, and he is off a lot of his prescription medications. That being said, that's not the case for everyone. Like you were saying, every single person's different. We also have customers who tell us that, CBD wasn't for me. It didn't work for me in the way I needed it to. So I think that I agree with your approach. Every person's different, and every different plant will work differently in the body. But there is some preliminary evidence that CBD could help with different mental illnesses.
Okay, word to focus in on. It's like a really big question. So there's this buzzword around healing communities, and it's called shadow work. And I've been studying, when we talk about integrative, we have the symbol of light and dark, right? And about the yin and the yang. And in the West, we have a very limited language of the masculine and the feminine, which I'm not going to get into that. You will. Yeah, it's just the conversation's not that long. Anyways, so what I've noticed with body work is that a lot of people will come to me specifically because they know my niche is the nervous system, and I can get people to fall asleep really quickly and get into this like really lovely headspace. But it's kind of like a state between sleeping and a meditation. And people leave feeling like they're stoned. So a lot of dopamine is getting released. Again, it's just like that really basic need of connection through touch. And I pay really close attention to people who are coming to me for the first time. I ask them questions about what the needs they are that they have, they want me to address. And a lot of the times over time, what is uncovered is their story that is like being stored inside their body. So events, experiences, traumas, pain, hurt, like that has been packed away in what we would call the shadow. Things that are like being stuffed down and, compartmentalized. There's something about touch that you can't really hide from it. Our events in our lives are stored in tissue. So throughout the sessions that I spend with my clients, we will come to find, is this an emotional, is this emotional? Is this mental? Is this the wild card of like a spiritual journey, or is this like a physical structural issue? Most of the time it's all of it. But really with mental health, I've noticed I've worked with veterans and mothers. And we, in our culture, we tend to glorify one part of those stories, right? We tend to glorify and talk about the soldier like going off to war, or the pregnant mother at the baby shower. We celebrate the beginning of this journey. And what I've seen in my practice in this area of the country is postpartum issues, like major postpartum mental health, which I had to end up going to counseling because of the rage that I had, the lack of support, the disposal of female bodies was like, I felt like I was drowning, like I couldn't help these women enough. So that became a focus, and then veterans issues. Again, no one wants to talk about what happens when the soldier has to assimilate back into our culture. So massage and body work has really given me an exposure to like where we need more infrastructure and more support with mental health services. Maybe one day I'll go back to school to address that, or, but really it's just giving people a sense of safety and support.
I guess taking a look at not just a vegan diet or a plant-based diet, but looking at food as a whole, food is what we congregate around, right? You go to your family's gatherings, family reunions, birthday parties, celebrations, all of this stuff. And we always think back to, you'll smell pizza as you're walking down the street, and you think back to like your 7th grade pizza party with all of your best friends. And it's I don't know, is there more to food than just its taste? I think that there really is. There's so much emotional ties to it from our past that bring up good feelings, good memories. And so it can be really, really difficult to say goodbye, to let go of those foods. And whether we are coherent, whether we're aware of that or not, it definitely plays a part. And so for Dusty and I, it wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight to transition to eating more whole foods, plant foods. But we have come to a place where we've realized that you want to eat foods that love you back, not just foods that love you, that make you feel warm and fuzzy in the moment. But how can I eat foods that I can feel warm and fuzzy about, that give me those same memories, those same feelings, but they're going to love me in return? And like we said at our workshop earlier today, You can be a bodybuilder and focus on just your macros, and you can eat whatever you want as long as you're within range of your macros, and you can look pristine. You can have the perfect physique. But what if you were to flip your body inside out? What if you wore your skin inside out? How would it look? A lot of times, there are a lot of us that can get away with eating whatever we want. It doesn't change our shape or size. But at a cellular level, you have to wonder what your cells are feeling. A lot of times we don't feel that until years and years down the road. And that has a compound effect. And also, I just wanted to touch on something that I thought about recently after watching a documentary talking about our cells, and that is that our cells do hold all of our emotions, all of our energy, all of our experiences. They also hold the experiences of the cells that we take in. So living beings, sentient beings who have experienced pain, suffering, emotional trauma, abuse, separation from loved ones, from offspring. And this is what really has started to tug at my heartstrings recently, coming at this from a totally biological health standpoint, and now actually listening and paying attention to these compassionate vegans and finding a middle ground and being like, I understand the health side, I understand the compassion side, and have started to marry the two together and realize that my mental health is based on the foods I put in my body that nourish me, and they're also based on, am I having to take somebody else's life? And that does actually impact your cells.
Well, to kind of set the food aside and go back to like our main, what our website and everything is Eat, Move, Rest, and to touch on what you guys have all already said, is that the food aside, the move and the rest, they need to be looked at as a whole. For me specifically, it's been a challenging couple of years, and like I said, I feel better than I ever have physically. But my mental health I have legitimately have struggled more than, say, 3 or 4 years ago. And so I thought that I had it dialed in with my diet specifically. I thought, man, I changed the way that I'm eating and I feel so clear and I feel so alive. And then all of a sudden I'm having panic attacks and feeling depressed, and our lives are great. We have an 8-month-old, almost 9-month, who's out there screaming, and you're probably like wanting to run out there. But I'm wondering why is my mental health, why do I feel anxious or depressed or not as good or as clear lately? Because I'm doing everything right. And then I take a closer look and I realize, especially Maggie, the physical touch. Aaron, you and I talk about this a lot. We grew up different in that your family didn't hug a lot or touch a lot, and mine did. And so we've had to address that as a couple, even to be like, look, I need touch, or I need a massage, and you're realizing it too, or I need acupuncture. And of course, we need to continue to eat right, and rest has been so big for me. It's the most neglected. It's like cool to hustle hard, right? If you are Gary Vee, like everybody knows Gary Vee and listens to Gary Vee, who, sometimes like he's great, but sometimes I'm just like, I got to turn the Gary Vee off, and I think you should too, and take a nap. Like seriously, my rest was so out of whack this last year. Having a baby at home, obviously, probably has something to do with that. But besides that, just not taking the time to rest, meditation is like the biggest thing right now. But what is meditation, and how do we meditate? Like, how many podcasts have we all listened to about meditation and how to meditate? And it's like, these things have been around since the beginning of time. Like, just get back to the basics. Just eat some healthy food. Just quiet down at some point. Get some good rest. Wake up, move your body, and the cycle just continues. And the more I've gotten back into that for myself recently, I've been on antidepressants. I've been on, again, other medications before. nothing feels better and nothing makes you feel better than getting on track with those three simple things. And it's a holistic thing, like you've said with everything else. It's all seeing the body as one. And yeah, we like to say that the eat, move, rest cycle, it's like a train. You like, you build momentum. You get a good night's rest, and you wake up feeling refreshed. You have a good breakfast, like the smoothie that we made for the group this morning. You're packed full of energy, and you have the energy to go for a run or lift some weights or do whatever. And then you're worn out at the end of the day, right? And it continues. And you sleep even better, and then you want to eat healthier, and then you want to work out harder. And yeah, it's just all using the practices that we do, that we think we all should, has improved my mental health more than, an antidepressant or any drug or supplement, or even, like I said, the physical touch thing. It's like so important, these things that are so absent. I feel I'm probably talking too much. The one last thing, touch me, please. My mom specifically, who is on vacation right now, and I'm so glad, because she's been single for 10 years, and I feel so bad for her sometimes, because I wonder if she ever gets touched. And I've realized for myself, gosh, I get to hold my son too much, right? And be with my wife and everything that I get. And there's so many people that I look around, whether they're friends or relatives or, like I said, my own mom. And it's like, gosh, how many days does she maybe go without being touched? And yeah, it's a big one. So I don't know. Touch for mental health. That might be a big takeaway for me. So
Yeah, definitely. One thing I want to bring up, and it was brought up earlier in the beginning, is this idea of stigma, right? And the reason why this is all kind of woohoo to some people is because I didn't realize it too, that they're out in the West Coast and the East Coast, all these kind of sort of things are the norm almost, and even in other parts in the world. So one question I wanted to bring up, and this probably be the last kind of takeaway before we go get questions from the audience, is kind of what would you say to people who are still kind of skeptical or on the fence, especially in a place like Nebraska where a lot of this is still relatively still getting into the mainstream?
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Chinese medicine, and that'll kind of wrap around to that. But so Chinese medicine, the foundation of traditional Chinese medicine is to seek the balance within the human body. And that is done by finding the balance between the yin and the yang energies, and then how the qi, the many qis, and the blood flow through the body. So yin and yang are, I'm sure you're all familiar with the symbol, right? The symbol of the yin and the yang is with the little, there's the black side with the white circle and the white side with the black circle. That actually is yin within yang and yang within yin. They are complete and polar opposites, but they cannot exist without one another. In fact, the separation of them in the human body equals death. There are 28 possible pulse qualities felt on each different wrist that determine kind of how things are going in the body. Some of them I'll never even feel in clinic because they're pending death, hopefully. But yin is the moon, yang is the sun. Yin is feminine, yang is masculine. Yin is dark and cold, yang is warm and bright. Yin is inward, reflective, contemplative, and restful, meditating. Yang is outward, active, social, working. What do we value in this culture, right? Go, 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 do, pull yourself up on your bootstraps, go on, nobody wants to hear your problems, get back to work. That is the problem that we are all in right now. That is why our world is the way that it is. It's because it's been a lack of yin. The name of my clinic is 13 Moons Acupuncture. This culture has seen the number 13 as being bad luck. Take this away today. The number 13 is a very good luck number. There are 13 moon phases in our solar year. When yin is, the feminine spirit is rising up in this country, in this planet, especially needs to be in this country, and yin, and I don't mean women, I mean the feminine spirit in all beings. And yin is where can we collaborate? Where can we come together? Where can we understand one another? And the medicine around that is holistic and health and healing. And so in Chinese medicine, we are seeking to find the balance in the body. And by living life, the human is actually the bridge between heaven and earth. The human is sustained from the earth through food, and it is divinely guided through heaven. Whatever that is to you, that can be anything. That can just be the cosmos. To me, it's the great mystery. When we are operating in, if you are too yin, you can't go out and make a living. If you are too yang, you're going to have a heart attack. So it's all about finding the balance, and that is possible, but we have to kind of explore and try to figure that out. Usually when people come into my office, sadly, I mean, I've trained them, so I've been doing this almost 17 years, like, you need to call me when you have anything. Don't go to the doctor, don't get antibiotics yet. Yes, you may need them, and yes, I'll be the first one to say you need to go get antibiotics. But people are just opening up more and more, and my thing with Chinese medicine is, listen, this is the original medicine, this is the original way, this is the way. Like, so the Tao is the way. It literally translates as that. That is the way to live life. It's how to eat, it's how to exercise, it's how to sleep, it's how to digest, and there are a certain set of rules how to do that. And so usually what I say to my people is, you're either going to be so glad that you're going to say in 20 years, oh my God, I'm so glad I listened to Donna, or you're going to be like, oh my God, I wish I had listened to Donna. So that, I think people are waking up, and the other thing is people are like sick and tired of being sick and tired, and so they're finding alternative ways. And so the good news is there's a lot of them now. So yay, thanks.
I was a soccer mom. I was the most normal, average person you ever met. And I'm in natural health. I'm an herbalist, for gosh sake. So that right there is this destigmatization of what we do here, I think. Mm-hmm. You can have hers.
I would say, CBD, again, I'm speaking from the CBD perspective. It is a relatively new supplement treatment, and there is a lot of information out there right now, but there's a lot of misconceptions about CBD because it's so closely related to marijuana. For people who want to try a natural remedy, and like I said earlier about mental health, there are a lot of different use cases for CBD, and there's a lot of research being done right now on what it could potentially help with. So I would say, hopefully, for the CBD industry specifically, more research comes out in the next 2 years that would substantiate some of the claims that people are anecdotally making about how it's helping them, so that more people are open to trying this supplement and remedy. And hopefully that will infiltrate throughout our medicine system.
Destigmatizing in this area. So I've wanted to move to LA. I've wanted to move to Brooklyn to practice. I think about it almost like weekly. I'm going to be really honest, because it gets really lonely. I've been called a witch. Which I have, that's, again, a whole other conversation. There are rumors that circulate, and, because people don't know what it is. And so the stigma is very real. As much as we want to, be like, this is... these are really progressive approaches. I have had times where I'm like, I think I have to move out of this city to be safe, to be okay. That's real. So I had to go to therapy for that, but then that led me down a path that I'm writing a book about witchcraft and and about I don't want to say certain words. but learning about this culture, I grew up in Madrid, Spain. So the culture there it was all, you were like, you can't, like, you're being touched all the time. You're being kissed all the time. People are constantly asking you, like, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Like, who are you in love with? And so like when we left Madrid and we came to the US, they put me in Catholic school. In one of the most conservative dioceses in the nation, if not the world. And I went with like no touch, no one asked you how you felt, like blah, 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 blah. So I've left Lincoln many times. And when I established my practice in Lincoln, I never ever thought in a million years that I would have a practice here. Again, I was out to LA. But you know what happened? My books were like stacked. Like so many people come to me and they would come to me in secret. Right? And then like, I just have never been able to leave because I'm so booked out. So I'm like, clearly there's evidence that there's a need here. Culturally, we have a lot of work to do because there is such a lack of respect for what is deemed a feminine practice. Even in my school, the school itself was separated. And they separated it out by like very like yin feminine practice versus like athlete, sports massage, Western clinical. And these two departments would argue. They would talk like shit about each other. And I remember I was like leaving, I was like, I will leave integrating all these perspectives. So coming here in this culture, when the witch pointing started, I was like, here we go. But again, it has led me down a really exciting path of research. By the way, herbalists were the first scientists in Europe, and that didn't really go too well. So here we go again. Like we're coming back to a lot of what in Europe, my ancestry is. It was indigenous, like practices for Europe was plant science, and now here we are with an herbalist, and there was a lot of body work and massage. So again, like this is an alternative. This is just our culture of the West being able to integrate the feminine and yin spirit like back in and recognize the importance of the body and the nourishment of the body. So I don't know. I guess it's really terrifying, you know, to be in a culture where, well, yeah, I'm not, you know, I want to respect people who actually practice, you know, anyways. But like, I think it's scary that anytime you heal, right? There's a certain level of letting go of control, and there's a certain level of like vulnerability that ultimately, like, you're going to come up with any excuse to not do it. So in our culture too, if so many people have benefited from maintaining status quo, or have been like benefited and kept in control with just doing what they need to do to belong and fit in, it's going to be really difficult for them to like try something outside of that box. But like once they do, it's like it just unravels. And then that's when you get like really progressive cities on the coast. We're just, I think, 20 years, 15 years behind, like culturally. So
God, I hope it's not that long.
I think we're well on our way.
Yeah.
And I do think that social media has definitely helped a lot to bridge that gap, which is a reason why we got on there in the first place, is to find connection and to help bring more awareness
Build
and
a community where
yeah.
there isn't one. Basically.
But as far as destigmatizing the V word, essentially being vegan, it's, you know, people either love you, this many people love you, and this many people can't stand you, because you have to let everyone know everywhere you go that you eat this and you don't do that. And but I would first just start by telling somebody, listen, if anybody couldn't stand us, it was us. We made fun of us, basically, back in the day. But I just think that's why we've kind of tried to steer clear of that word a little bit. Like, let's live that lifestyle and remember it's at its core about compassion. So loving not just,
Arguing.
innocent animals. Yeah, and not just loving, arguing with other people, but let's be compassionate for our fellow brothers and sisters too, and respect each other's differences because we're all so different. But looking more at just we've tried to focus more on just the food side, the plant-based side of things, and just have fun with it because honestly, at the end of the day, nobody can argue with more fruits, more veggies, the power of living foods, colorful foods. Life brings more life. So
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest entry point for most people is to just be bold, bright, colorful, vibrant, energetic, and just walk the walk and say, try it for yourself.
Yeah. I think we're basically out of time. I'm just going to say, and as far as destigmatizing plant-based diets, there are so many documentaries, so many doctors, so many things out right now I'm sure we've all seen that have helped to destigmatize more plants. So if you haven't found it already, ask us for resources. There's too many. So, yeah.
Well, I wish we can talk more and more. But of course, we'll have some room right now for any questions if you would like to ask an individual or the group as a whole. And of course, I would imagine maybe some would like to stick around and see if you have any personal questions at all. Again, if you do not want to be recorded, just let us know. Raise your hand. We can always just get an audio recording. So at this time, if anybody feels uncomfortable, yeah, okay. But if you anybody have a question at the moment?
I got a question. Okay.
And then I have the microphone as well, so.
This is for, you said you were doing Chinese medicine, right? What books would you recommend for someone who wanted to get into acupuncture or Chinese medicine?
So two that are, I know my associate thinks these are bleh, lame, but I would tell you for the lay person, they're actually very good. One is The Web That Has No Weaver by Ted Kapchuk. And then Between Heaven and Earth. So for me to become licensed in the state of Nebraska, I had to complete a 3,000-hour 4-year master's degree. I had to sit for rigorous board exams. I had to go through clean needle technique, and then you pay to get licensed in the state of Nebraska, and I'm overseen by the Board of Medicine and Surgery. And then in order to maintain my license, I have to have 60 CEUs every 4 years for my national certification and 50 every 2 years for the state of Nebraska. So it's actually not cheap to be an acupuncturist in the state of Nebraska. The other thing is I worked really hard on changing. Our original statute said that a person had to go to a doctor before having an acupuncture treatment, and I sort of spearheaded the path to removing that, which we finally did in 2017, so good for us. Thanks for your question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. So I think everything you're doing is really great. How, and this can be towards anybody, how accessible are your services for people? Because as you know, not a lot of people have insurance. Money's a big issue. How do you gauge that?
So I will tell you that I'm actually the most expensive acupuncturist in Nebraska. But we also offer various things to bring the cost down, like packages and that sort of thing. A lot of people's health savings accounts will cover acupuncture. We also offer community acupuncture. I'll hand the mic over to Mo because she'll talk a little bit more about her community herbalism program to reach more of that. And we can eat. The thing about a lot of times what I hear is, but it's so expensive to eat healthy or to do this or to do that. And, it is. It's true. But the thing is what nobody talks about is the high cost of cheap food or not taking care of yourself. So we can either pay now or pay later. And so but VAs are starting to have more acupuncture available. There are more there's actually a really great community acupuncturist here in Lincoln. And so it is accessible. It really is.
I mean, I think to a certain extent it is, but I think a lot of it is the policy that we have around certain things that are definitely still barriers for people. Right. So that's kind of what I'm right. Or even the unhealthy food, you know. Right. I mean, sometimes that's all people have. That's true. And that's what we also need to talk about. You know, it sounds great. It looks great on picture. It looks great on everything, and it's so easy, but it really isn't sometimes for some families. So anytime I hear of great resources like this, I'm like, all right, well, how accessible is it? So.
Well, if you can't pay now or pay later, come to our community clinic where you don't have to pay at all.
For sure. Yeah, I would.
As far as education goes, that's one of the reasons why we're on YouTube is because it's totally free. And that's been the best way for us to disseminate the information to as many people as possible. But then as far as, like you said, going out and getting all of the fancy health foods, you know, buying these expensive imported tropical fruits and things like that. But you 100% don't need those foods to thrive on a plant-based diet. In fact, you know, you can go to your local ethnic market and grab the biggest bag of rice, the biggest bag of beans, and you know, buying those things in bulk they store well, last for a long time, and they're super versatile too, which we've found.
Yeah. So. I think, again, talking to, say, Aaron's dad, who's a physician and working formally in insurance industry, I think it's more about people that are interested speaking up about it, calling your insurance company and saying, hey, I want to go see an acupuncturist, or I need a health coach, or whatever, and realizing that I'm not going to go to the doctor because even their reimbursements and stuff aren't what they should be. And so I think the more someone can speak up and say, hey, I'm going to switch my insurance if you guys don't make a note of this, et cetera, because, again, working formally for an insurance company, they want your premium, right? So if we can be either looking into alternative forms of, like we are starting to for self-employed people, there are insurance companies out there that are recognizing these modalities. It's just that, you know, until the majority of us, say millennials, step up and say, I don't want to be overfed and overmedicated like my grandparents or parents even. We want to come into these alternative methods or these other modalities. Then insurance companies will start to, I mean, they don't have a choice, right?
Well, they
have started.
The
so
one that we use.
For sure. So yeah, and we can give you guys names and stuff later of insurance companies that can do that. But yeah.
I think this is a very important question. This is something I've thought about over the years. Unfortunately, just with my service in particular, like my body is the product. So I only have so much energy I can give throughout a day. Like if I could like have more support and training like an athlete, like I don't have those resources. I just can't afford anything lower. I think the burnout rate in massage therapy is 77% of people burn out in 2 years. So I'm going on to 8 years. So the therapists that I know that stay in the industry long term, like it's a complete lifestyle that like I don't drink, I don't do drugs, like I have to get like 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night. So I'm limited in that way, but I think that the outreach and the kind of commentary, which I feel like I want to become more vocal about the health and wellness industry, because there's a lot of bull crap out there, because like is become like maintaining an image. And if we're really talking about like integrative health and like wholeness, like people are surviving. And so really it's not on the top of their list, like to make an Instagram like post about like them getting to the gym every day, or like, you know, the glow up, and, you know, they're trying to feed their kids. And or in the recovery community, people are trying not to shoot up. So like when we talk about accessibility, in health, like, is this for people who are already like, you know, can have the resources and have the mental health and the physical like ableism, you know, or is health and wellness for people in a certain like socioeconomic, you know, status? We have, again, a lot of work to do when it comes to integrating holistic health and alternative health into the culture. I really love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if we could discuss more like, okay, what's like an essential and like what's a need? And I think health and wellness practitioners, we should challenge one another. And we've talked about this a lot, actually, like challenging each other to be like, how can we make education, things that we've learned in our undergraduates, in our school, like how can we make education more accessible so people can like feel empowered to meet their own needs? A lot of the times with really, really high cost services, there's a dependency that's developed where people feel like in order for me to be healthy, I have to have this. And so yet again, we're like in spiritual materialism. We're in like, if I don't maintain this image, then I'm not healthy. It's like, it can spiral out of control. Where it's like, can we just work on like maybe identifying when you're in fight or flight? What do you need to do? Like the next action, what do you need to do to like take care of yourself? Instead of it being like the right clothes, the right post, the right whatever, like that, none of that really matters when it comes down to it. So I think the real challenge is how do we make this more accessible? And I think it's education. So thank you for that question.
Well, I'm afraid that we're out of time, but of course, if you have any more questions for any of the panelists, feel free to stick around or get any contact information. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's wonderful that we got to meet with these panelists, and thank you to all our panelists for sharing your wisdom, your thoughts, and your experiences. And yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lincoln Calling.
Thanks.